All right. So I hope you can see my screen, isn't it? So what is the function in MATLAB? Function is like y is equal f of x. So we have the output and we have the input, right? If we keep the input, we'll get the output. Like, say for example, in industry, if you give some input, you will get the output, the results, isn't it? You'll get the product. So like the function, if we put the input, we'll get the output. The function is like a procedure or method, like we can use a collection of commands in MATLAB or any programming languages. Function is like that. Okay, so in MATLAB, like we have a function and return. Return is optional like Python. In function, we can use the square brackets for outputs. Then we should have a function name. You can give any function name, but be careful. It shouldn't be the same with the built-in function. Okay. Then within parentheses, we can use the inputs. How many inputs you do want to use? Then the statements. Okay. Then there are two types of functions in any programming language. One is built-in, like already exist. Say for example, in MATLAB already exists the mean, var means the variance, std means the standard deviation. We users also can make our own function, okay? Like user different function. Say for example, instead of mean, we can make a AVG of like average. We can, instead of var, we can give the var, variance, then standard deviation, etc. Okay. So for your concern, we are continuing two classes for tonight because in the last weekend we had some problem. Okay, that's why we are continuing two classes. Did you get it? These are makeup classes function. First is control flow, then these are a function. Okay. All right. So there are some rules to make your own function. For built-in function, you can just use the built-in function in MATLAB. But when you are writing your own function, you need to follow the instructions, okay, carefully. And I will show how to make a function in MATLAB. So first is start with the function keyword and end with return, but is optional. What will be the function file? So for example, here you can see the function file. Say for example, this is a basic statistics. This is a MATLAB code. Function should be like function like this: fx, add me function. Then avg, average function. You see the function, okay? So what will be the file name? You see the avg. We can't make min because in MATLAB, the min function, the name of the min function already exists. Did you get it? All right. So a function file, the first line of the function file is called the function declaration line. Say for example, okay, let me close this and open here like the average. Okay. The first line, it is called the declaration line. Okay. Then the name of the function file must be same as the function. Look at, this is a function name, isn't it? avg. And look at the function file name. Are you hearing me? Okay.
Yes.
So the function name and the file name should be same. Okay, ma? Okay. Then function file names are case sensitive. What does it mean? Case sensitive means if you use the small letter, you should use the small letter when you're using the function. If it's the capital letter, then you should use the capital letter. Should be the same. Did you get it? So these are case sensitive. So it is recommended to use only lowercase letters is better. Okay, is better. Then the function's name, okay, must begin with a letter, not with number. It should start with a letter. Okay. Then any combinations of letters, numbers, and underscores can appear after the first character. Okay, first you will use the one character. Then you can use the combination like letters, numbers, or underscores, etc. But it should begin with a letter. Okay. The function names cannot contain spaces or punctuation characters. No. Okay. No. Then a function can report a warning. Can you remember we use a warning function? A built-in function in MATLAB. Even in function, it can give warning. Then, so for example, like nested loop, you can have the sub-functions, like nested or sub-functions. Inside a function, you can write another function, okay, like nested loop. Then what is the input and output arguments? Like here, yes, we have this is output, then input. So what is the input argument? In parentheses, this is input argument. We can use a square bracket, or we can, whatever. If you don't want to square bracket, is fine. This is output, this is the input, okay? So what is the input and output arguments? So functions cannot be called with more input or output arguments than the file specifies. For example, if you specified only one output, you would get one output. Okay. If you specified only one input, it should be provided one input. But in your function, you provided two inputs, but when you are using this function, you are giving only one input value. It will not work. Did you get it? Should be the same. The number of input and output arguments can be determined by functions. There is built-in function, like if you want to know how many number of input arguments on output should be, then there is a built-in function like number of argument in, number of output, number of argument output. Okay. So like we can use switch case. We just learned. So for users, sometimes you are using the functions, but there is a built-in function like min. So how many inputs will be for that function and how many outputs will you get? So in that case, they use the built-in function number of argument input. That means use this built-in function. We users, if we use more than two inputs, then it will catch how many inputs did you use. Then it will give you warning. But if you are the same, then it will give you the result. So we can know number of input and output arguments by built-in function, number of argument in and number of argument out. Okay. For example, like switch, we just learned the switch case and otherwise, isn't it? So input, like this is a function. How many inputs here? How many inputs? Two. But you are using, say for example, add me function in MATLAB, you are providing three inputs. So you will get what? Warning, but here we define 0. That means you will not get any results. Did you get it?
Yeah.
If you use a case 2, like if you put the 2 input, then you will get like C plus B, 1, A. Otherwise, if you give more than 2 inputs, so you will get 0. Okay, so we can use switch case. Otherwise, we just learn. So we can use number of input arguments. So, and by this way, we can know how many inputs you are using. So what will happen? Sometimes the built-in function gives the warning. Same way, we can use, okay, here. We can also use the number of argument function. Okay, like this here. there is two output. We can specify the output, how many output will be in square bracket. So for example, if you calculate the correlation coefficient with p-value and r, etc., etc. So in MATLAB, we can use a square bracket. There is options, like you will get the two outputs. But if you use more than two, you will get error or like this. So we can know how many outputs are you specified, okay, by this way. We can also use the variable argument input. Okay, so for example, any number of input arguments here. You see, can you remember in Python, when you write function, sometimes we define, okay, two inputs, you should put only two inputs, or three inputs, two arguments, three arguments. But there is a keyword arguments in Python. We can use the asterisk. In Python, we use the asterisk, like you can use more inputs. It's not limited. Did you get it? For this, in MATLAB, we can use variable argument in. That means accept any number of input arguments. So if we in the function, this is the input, okay, then in parentheses, we use the variable argument in, and by default in MATLAB, built-in function, you can use many inputs, even different types of data set. Just say, for example, if we use the variable list function, that once this is a numeric, then sometimes this is a string, then pipe, also the numeric, okay? So we can use three inputs. There is no limitation. Even I can use 5, 6, 10, whatever, because I didn't specify the certain inputs. For this is good. You can use 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, but depends on the function and algorithm or calculation method, etc. Anyway, so in case of variable argument input, in cases where one or more input arguments are fixed, like here we didn't fix the input arguments, you can use 2, 3, 4, etc. But in sometimes you can find some functions like we have a certain values, then there is optional. You can use or not, whatever. Like even in Python, there is a function we use. So must, there is some must input you should use, okay, certain input. Other, even you can use some optional other. So in that case, like one or two more input arguments are fixed, but variable argument input must appear at the last statement. So for example, here you said should be x and y. You must provide two inputs. Then you can use the third, like here for 10 and 20 xy. Then for variable argument in, we use 30, 40, 50. We also use three others. So this is an example. So for example, return any number of arguments. If you just use this one, okay, my function x, then you can also use a, b, and variable arguments in then my function, like this. So now let's practice in MATLAB. Okay. You already know how to open this. I talk about this in the first classes array management. So we have opened the iris dataset, Excel files. Yes. So from this, and the sepal length. I use the sepal length. This is the data. I already talked in the first class. Okay. In the array management class. Now we have a data sepal length. Now there is a built-in function. Say for example, I can use min function to average the sepal length, where I can calculate the variance. I will not talk more about the statistics and tonight's class, because we have another class. Okay, we have a separate class for statistical analysis. So in that class, I will talk the theory, and then I will explain details, and I will talk the application of these statistics. Okay, now we are focusing on the function. So built-in function. Bar means the variance. STD means standard deviation. So if you run, we'll get these results. Now we got the average value, we got the standard deviation, we got the variance. Okay. Now let's see. User defined function like average. I already open it. Yeah. Now we will write our own code. We don't want to use the main function. Okay. And let's see. What is the average or mean? If you see the statistics, average or mean means if you have the time series or any data x, okay, you have I1 to n, then divided by n. This is the mean or average. Okay. That means we define the results, output, and function name is avg, average. Then we specified one input like vector. Now calculate the returns, the mean of a vector. First, we need to sum, isn't it? We need to sum I to n, okay? Then divide by n. So my sum is equal 0, okay? Then for I is equal 1 to length vector. That means we'll provide the data as the input vector. Then my sum is equal my sum plus vector.
Hi, Mark.
Hello? Hello? Hey. Shama. Because this is an increment, okay? Increment. What is the increment? Like I define my sum is 0. That means 0 plus vector I. That means the first value of the vector. 0 plus first vector. Then the another, what will be the second one, right? The first, this I is the first value for the first value 1. Then 1 plus 1, what is 2? 2 plus, and then same way like it will continue till the vector, like we have a 1 to 10, first 0 plus 1, 1, then 1 plus 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like this, okay? Go till the length of the vector. This is an increment, this is a sum. Then we have a sum, we should divide it by length of the vector, like this, divided by n. That's it. So let's run user defined function average. So in average there was 5.84, and we also calculate using the user function. We got the same result, isn't it? 5.84. Same way we can use the variable standard, or is variance. Yes. We'll calculate the variance and standard deviation. We can use a nested function. We'll use two output, okay? What is the variance and standard deviation? We know the variance like x, our data, time series data to n, minus mean value. We can mean the value, square it. Then we sum I to n, then variance for sample n minus 1. Okay. Then we can calculate the standard deviation for sample. So standard deviation is just the square root of the variance. Okay. So this is the statistics. We'll talk more about it on the statistical classes. Anyway, so we can give the square bracket. We want to get two outputs. One is variance and standard deviation. So I gave the name variance standard deviation underscore standard deviation. Then only one input. Okay. So n is equal length vector. M is equal n minus 1 because we will calculate the variance for sample n minus 1. So there is a my sum is 0, then 1 to n. My sum is the same thing, but my sum plus, okay, this is like the first one, x minus mean value square. Okay, like this is a vector x, these are data, minus mean vector, then square. Did you get it? And this is for the increment. the same as before. Then what is the variance? We sum it, then divided by n, divided by n minus 1. So what is the n minus 1? We define n minus 1 is equal m. So this is a variance for sample. Then what is the standard deviation? Standard deviation is the square root of variance. Okay, then return. Now we'll get the variance. Okay. So variance is 0.68. Even we use the built-in function 0.68. The same. Then standard deviation. Standard deviation 0.82 and built-in function 0.82 same. Did you get it? So we can use a built-in function. Even we can write our own function, but you need to follow the instructions carefully. This is for all about for tonight. Any question? Oh,
Thank you, Mr. Jalal.
okay. If you don't
If
have
we have,
question,
if we have any questions,
yeah, you can ask. Or
yeah.
I can finish.
Hello, guys. Any questions? Yahya, Takin.
Is this video loaded on the Jalal canals on YouTube?
Sorry, yeah, I will upload I'll upload on YouTube and share in the group.
Okay.
2 classes, yeah.
Yes, it will